Why does it feel so cold inside my heart tonight? Be my man is what she said. It's not just the wind that's moving around tonight, but quick and clean don't make it right.
Righto, there was a group of blokes just after the depression started who found a gold bearing area way down in that gully, but the only trouble with it wasn't enormously rich and it had an awful lot of overburden on it. So their solution was what is known as hydraulic sluicing. They had a big water race that came in and brought the water into this dam that we're standing in now. The water ran continuously into this little dam. They had this pipe so they could shut this pipe off. When they released the water into this pipe, it went way down into the gully, and right at the very end they had a man on a nozzle and he would undercut all the overburden and they would sluice it back into a trench like a giant fire hose. And the hose itself was so strong it could knock a man down just for the power of the water. They had it mounted on a stand like that, and he was on it and he'd turn it and he'd undercut the bank and bring all the gold bearing gravels to the ground, push it in with the hose into the big race they'd dug, and then they'd clean up the race at the end of the week. And the force of the water was so strong that when it entered the pipe got gradually smaller and smaller. This is where the pipe come through. It's rusted out now. You're talking 90 years ago or 80 years ago. So the water entered the pipe, and so that the pipe wouldn't, as they got smaller and smaller and the pressure of the water got stronger and stronger, and the water was going way down there, probably 250 metres along the ground and a drop of an easy 50 metres in rise, they would bolt the pipes together. And this is what this was here. A pipe went over that, had a bolt in there, and the pipes were bolted together. That was the force of the water. And as each pipe was put on, it got a little bit narrower, and that's exactly what hydraulic is. So they had their water source up there into the holding dam. The water entered this pipe, and if you look at the slope, you can imagine the force of the water by the time it got to the bottom. And the bloke on the bottom, he had to hold on like buggery, sometimes two men on it. They'd undercut the bank, bring the water into the race, and they did really, really well. And especially in depression times when money was so short, they did really well. And then along this bank, there's another one up there, but this is the only one where they've left the pipe. You can see their holding dams, but this is the only one that left the pipe, and I suspect that this might have been the last one that they used because they've had it in the bank and they decided not to dig it out and use it again. They've written it off, but that's the interesting thing about it. These were made by the blacksmith, bolted on there, pipes were bolted together, and the hydraulic just means that the force of the water got tighter and tighter. So by the time it got down there with the natural speed of the slope and the fact that it was coming through a smaller hole, it could just about take the legs off a man. So this is a relic from the not so distant gold past, from around the 1930s. It's very interesting as well. There's only you, me, and Lyndall that know where this is now. Right, we're at the bush. Lyndall and I bribed Lyndall. I offered a 50-50 for the gold, and she's held on for 60-40. Then the first place we tried to go to, I went through two big mud puddles, and Lyndall said, "Is there anything up here?" I said, "Well, bugger all." She said, "Well, whack it in reverse. I'm not going up there." So we've settled here, and I like it here. There's a little tiny, the ground is really shallow, and it's hard to tell because of all the bracken, but if you step in here, there's a surface and it's only about 5 inches deep, and it runs right across there, probably 30, 40 feet. And then on the other side of the crest, we're right on the crest, there's a similar one. So obviously they believe the gold had come from the crest and shed down, and they were so sure that it had been created here and shed here, they whacked in a few costumes, which are these long fences. So they've dug trenches across the crest. That's a costume along there, and all they've tried to do with that is to try and cut the reef. They've tried to find the reef that's running north and south, so they've put a long costume in there, another one behind me, and another one over there. So they believe the gold was shed from the reef, come off the crest of the hill like that, and gone down both sides. And I've proven it to my own satisfaction before because I've got gold on both sides. And when you go further down the gully, as the gully opens up and gets deeper, they've worked the gully right back to bedrock on both sides. So we're right up on the crest, and the good part about this ground is the whole depth of the ground back down to bedrock or back down to base clay is there's no deeper than a foot all over it. So down here, we've got our first signal. So, they've been in here, taken out the surfacing. They thought the gold come from the reef and from the ridge, and they've cut it looking for the reef, and they've gone right across, which makes me think, well, if they were taking it from the surface here, but they tried to cut the reef further across on both directions, the gold was obviously spread further than they had the water to work. So, joy of joys. First signal for the day. Hopefully he's the first little bit of gold for the day, but he's in a good spot to be. There's the surface, and I don't want to labour the point, but there's the surface and it's very shallow. If they'd come another 2'6", they'd have squeezed this little bit of gold out, and I'm very hopeful it is a bit of gold. The ground itself is sort of what the old timers used to call salt and pepper. It's that sort of stone, so quartz stone and that country rock that they referred to as pepper. So we're in salt and pepper ground. We've got a little bit of something a bit better than salt and pepper in here. Now if you're at home, don't get carried away. Because we've got the external speaker on, they've got a booster in them. So you get a little signal and it pumps it up. Now as I said, with the booster on the speaker, you think you're going to get a bigger bit of gold than you're actually going to get, or a bit of lead or whatever the signal is, but if you come off the ground a little bit with your coil, you can go over it. You've got to get right down flat before it even makes a noise. And this is shallow ground. This ground here is probably only 6 or 7 inches deep. That's the deepest the signal can possibly be, so don't lean forward in your chairs at home thinking you're going to see a big piece of gold, because it's only a little fella. See how that grows just even with a fraction of an inch. Rightio, in my hand, it's on the coil. It carries on, it gets part hysterical, and look at this. I can see him now in my fingers. Your phone will be making noise, mate. So, but when it's all said and done, it's a nice little bit of gold. It's our first one for the canister. Lyndall's made, I don't know, probably Lyndall's made, I was going to say $10, but if that's worth $20, she's made 12, so she's on her way. I've been detecting along the sides of the gully, and I found a thing that I really enjoy when I do find it, because I can often scrounge a little bit of gold. And that's a heap of stones that have been washed. See all those stones? They're all washed stones that have come out of that area that's been worked there. So I've run the coil over pretty extensively over this heap of stones without digging them out. I didn't get a signal. When I came up a bit further here, another little pile of stones, but these are the small stones. These are the residue. See these? These are the ones that were been in the bottom of the dish or the bottom of the box. So coarse stones are thrown out first, Little stones next. Still no signal. That's just ground noise. Still no signal. Then up here, I've got a little tiny signal. Got a little tiny signal here. Now, I'm hoping it's either a bit of gold that's come down the slope, but I think more likely, when the digger's been washing, he's been using this water race here. You can barely see the water race, but there's an internal race here. This is the race that belonged to him that he used to cart the water. He's had his box or his dish, he's washed here. Back down there he's thrown out the coarse stones. Back down there he's thrown out the gravel. But maybe when he was coming down here, somehow or other he's lost a little bit. And it's easy enough to do because I've been out of the bush and swallowed them, and I'll let them go too. If you're wondering what happened to them after that, I just left them in. So it's easy enough to drop them. I'm hoping he's dropped one here. It may never ever been found before. It might be a bit that's come down the hill, but I'd like to think that he's washed it, had it in his hand, or been reaching for his little leather bag and dropped him out. It's a pretty timid signal, but it's a signal nevertheless. I don't want to go mad digging it because I know it's only a little tiny signal by it going on. Even with the booster on, it's not getting too excited. And if he has lost it, I don't want to be the second bloke that loses it. I try and keep it flat around it. The signal's there roughly, but I try and keep it flat so that it's lucky that the ground is pretty plain, pretty inert. Otherwise, if it was in red ground, I don't think you'd even find it. Keep going a little bit. And if you get to, there he is. There he is there, look. See right there? See that little fella there? Little tiny bit. And it's quite possible that our man was coming down from that water race, had dropped him into his bag, or thought he had, or had him on his finger, and he's dropped him there. He's dropped him there. This area was worked in about 1853, and a bit later than that, when it was worked the second time, probably in the late 1850s. And I don't know whether that bit of gold's been there all the time, or it's just a little bit they left for us. But that's our second one for the day. And you'd hardly pick that signal up if it was in the red ground, but because he's in this yellow clay, it was nice, just enough to know the difference between a bit of ground noise and a signal. So if you ever do that heap of stones I showed you down there, if you ever do find a heap of stones, don't be afraid to pull them apart and have a look. There'll often be little ones stuck on like that. But I think this bloke has come down from the water race, and he didn't have one like that. He's not like me, he gets carried away with one little tiny one. He might have had bloody 50 or 100 of those in his dish. Righto, that's our second for the day, so we're still doing all right.